Hello and welcome to the Ireland on the Fly podcast about the people and places of fly fishing in Ireland. This week we're joined by Glenda Powell, who's well known in Ireland and abroad as a fly casting instructor and guide on the river Blackwater. In recent years, Glenda has also been organising trips for salmon, sea trout and Arctic char to places such as Patagonia, Greenland and Iceland. And having just spent 2 months in the land of fire and ice, catching her personal best Icelandic salmon as well as some incredible sea trout and brown trout, we decided to catch up with Glenda to find out more about the fishing as well as the ongoing protests amongst the population against the country's increasing fish farms. But first, Tom, I suppose talking to Glenda, it really hits home, I think, the importance of going travelling for fishing if you can get the opportunity to do it. And if anything, as Glenda says, obviously you get to see incredible parts of the world, but it actually makes you appreciate the fishing a lot more than when you come home.
Yeah, very true. I mean, Glenda touches on that. And actually, I think it's great. She says, she's always wanted to travel. And fishing has opened up an opportunity for her to travel. And some of the places she's gone to have been fantastic. You'll often hear anglers say, uh, you know, fishing will bring you to some of the most beautiful places in the world. And that's very true. That is very true. And I count Ireland amongst that. And we touched on that when chatting to when we were chatting to Glenda there. I mean, there's some fantastic place to fish in this country. But, that's not to say that you shouldn't go abroad and sample what's over beyond yonder as well. I mean, like we were discussing it there and just remembered, I mean, it's 2 years since you were in Greenland.
I can't believe that. It feels like a lifetime ago. And I still, like I said, it's still one of the trips of my lifetime highlight. I go back in an instant. That was the first kind of big fishing trip abroad I went on, and it just makes you stop and think and go, oh, wish I could do this all the time. But then I suppose what's scarce is beautiful and all that, or what's rare is beautiful. So it's I enjoyed it. Definitely kind of laid a marker down to kind of whet your appetite, and it's a bit like, Tom, you go to the Orkneys every year now. That's in the diary, isn't it? You're off.
And it's and that's it. So, like, the opposite of that, I suppose, what's scarce is beautiful when you make something kind of a regular thing. But, and we're chatting there afterwards, and, you'd said to me, well, maybe you have to change the Orkneys and go somewhere else. What came up there? Yeah, I'd love to. But, it's got to be sensible. I mean, it'd be lovely to go off everywhere all the time and everything. But, you've got to fit things in. There are other things happening in everybody's lives and everything.
But you know what I find, Tom? I agree, it's time, it's resources, it's all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But then it was a bit like kind of when I was writing the book, I just kind of, when you kind of put it in the diary, book it, and it's there. It's a bit like, I'm doing triathlons at the moment. That's a whole other story. That's why I've aged 20 years. The last 2 years feels like 20 years. But what happens is you put the event in the diary. So you say, right, I'm going to do such and such event on the 20th of September, and it's booked and it's paid for and it's looming large, and you're like, oh God, I really don't feel like that. But it's done, it's there, and you aim towards it. And it's a bit like the same with the fishing, I think. If you can just put it in the diary, and whether it's Ireland, abroad, wherever, and just make it happen, you'll make it happen then. Like Iceland, actually, I haven't spoken to Glenda there. Iceland now is on the radar for me. It just sounds incredible in terms of the fishing that can be done. And Keith McDonald as well. I've seen some of his updates.
Yeah, I mean, we've done a couple of bits on Iceland, naturally with Keith, and easy to get to. Easy to get to, than let's say having to travel, across the equator to go to South America. But back to what you said there, I think that's really crucial. You gotta just make sure you do it. Like when I went to New Zealand, it was a huge thing for me at the time. But I said I had to go there. I put it in stone because I really didn't want to end up saying, I always wanted to go to New Zealand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to, what you said, I mean, it's like when everything, like very easy with the triathlons and well, not very easy with the triathlons, very easy to sort them out. I won't say they're very easy there. But, when you have the date, that's it. You've got to do it.
Yep.
So it's the same with the fishing trips. You just got to commit yourself to it and go, that's it.
It's something, or even to say, like, even now I was chatting, like, oh, geez, you know what? I wouldn't mind just booking one trip maybe next year and just see, And like I said, Iceland's a Ryanair flight away. It doesn't have to be the Norwegian or whatever, the expensive Iceland stuff. There's options there where you can actually kind of, do it on a budget.
And that's the beauty of it, and that's the beauty of what we do as well. There is possibilities to do it on a budget. You don't have to always go with an outfitter and pay, but and I'm not knocking that because there's a lot to be said for that as well. I've looked at that and going and like if you can and you can go outside and budget yourself with it. An outfitter is perfect, but I think if you're doing on just going on kind of winging it, that's great. It's kind of a holiday for yourself if you're slipping around on your own, But I wouldn't knock it. Outfitters are very good if you go because you'll get exactly what you want.
Yeah, and in fairness, when I did Greenland, that was that was all it was booked. You had the lodge, all that, and it was brilliant because, in fairness, trying to get to this place, and
it's the only way to do it, Dara.
Yeah,
it is the only way to do it.
But having said that, like as you'll hear, Glenda tells us at the end about 2 new rivers they're exploring in Greenland. Glenda's actually flown out as we're recording this.
I could see you getting all excited because you're correlating with what you've been told 2 years ago.
Untapped rivers in Greenland. Oh my God. It sounds like all I was thinking was Arthur Conan Doyle's, what's that book? The Lost World or something, where they basically find this world back in time. Yeah. And there's like monster fish that have never been fished for
monster char. I think there's a chance there that we could be getting them an episode of Star reporting for it. You never know.
I'll be divorced first before it's
See, and that's another thing that comes into fishing trips. You've always got to think of the big picture.
Unfortunately, yes.
No, you do.
You never know. Well, look, you never know. It's funny, actually. What are we now? We're nearly into September, last few weeks of the season. We'll cover that probably in the next few episodes, kind of the last few weeks. Yeah, you kind of almost, you're nearly always making plans for 2025 now, looking ahead. But sure, look, let's get this season done and dusted before we start talking about that. But look, let's get back to this week's guest, Glenda Powell. And she told us about her recent trip to Iceland.
So I left Ireland on the 3rd of June and I spent about 2 months, just over 2 months in Iceland. I came back on the 8th of August. And
you missed our beautiful summer, Glenda.
Yeah, but I believe it wasn't so beautiful after all. However, it didn't rain very much, I believe, in the last couple of months in Ireland either. So even though people have been complaining a little bit about the lack of sunshine, we didn't get any rain in the rivers either, did we? So we've had a bit of a drought on the Blackwater. But over to Iceland, I went over for lots of reasons. One is that I've been teaching Icelandic people how to cast for quite a number of years. But I thought that I would extend my trip a little bit this year and set up a new program on the River Blunda, which is the northwest of Iceland. And the program was to fish not only for salmon on the River Blunda, but also to fish for Arctic char, sea trout, Arctic char, sea trout, salmon, and brown trout.
Okay.
And it was a new program. The Blunda would have been always known as a salmon fishery. And what happens is on the Blunda Beat 1, for example, which is the lowest big pool very close to the sea, it only opens on the 5th to the 22nd of June, and all of the rest of the river was closed. So I decided that it would be wonderful if we could open the rest of the river and do some trout fishing and char fishing and sea trout fishing. And we ran that. So we had 18 people came out with us from all over the world, Dara. To fish for what we call the Blunda McNab, so trying to catch all 4 species. And we had a good time and we caught a lot of very nice trout and char and sea trout, and not everyone caught salmon. It was still very early in the season, but approximately half of the people out of that group or those groups caught salmon, which was great.
Anyone do the McNab?
Yes, we had about 5 McNabs, I think, which was really super. Yeah.
Where does the McNab come from? Does anybody know?
Yeah, it comes from Scotland. So as a very young person, I was up in the Highlands of Scotland stalking red deer, and I was a stalking gilly at that time. So the McNab was that you had to go out in one day and shoot a grouse, catch a salmon, and shoot a red deer. So that was a McNab. So it was 3, but we added the 4th one into it for the Blunda McNab.
And who was McNab? Do we know?
No, I don't actually.
Okay.
No.
Don't know. I think he may have been a Highland gilly.
Okay. So he did it.
I think so. I'm under some impression that it is. But you just made it harder by making it 4. I had enough of 3, Glenda.
I know. But of course, it was really great that some people actually managed to do it, and it was
Yeah.
a bit of crack trying to do it as well. So it kept everybody on their toes, and we kept rotating people around.
What size of fish?
So we had salmon up to 20 pounds during these groups. Patrick Deviney, actually from Kerrysville, caught one of the biggest salmon on the Blunder this year. I think he got the second largest salmon, and I caught the third largest salmon, I believe. Um, and
That was your PB, was it, from Iceland?
That was my personal best, yeah. So they measure fish; they don't really weigh them out there, and my fish was 95 centimeters. And they have different scales for reading fish. And like 95 centimeter Norwegian fish or Irish fish would be different from an Icelandic fish. So to them, a 95 centimeter Icelandic salmon is approximately 20 to 20 and a half pounds, something like that. And
And if
so I
you
was
were to
delighted. It
compare
was
it,
my second best fish.
fantastic. But if you were compared, are Icelandic salmon longer, Glenda, or are they stockier? That's what I'm asking. So, like the
Yeah, so
95
I would
centimeter,
have found them longer as
right?
opposed to fatter. Yeah.
Just describe the kind of terrain. I'm picturing this kind of volcanic type, rocky, lunar type landscape. Is it that kind of vibe?
Yeah, not really, not really. No, I mean it's rocky, and there's a lot of cliffs in it. But I mean, like Darren and Tom, whenever I arrived on the 3rd of June, you can imagine. So the volcano was still erupting,
Oh yes.
Oh,
and as I
class.
was flying into
Did you say
Reykjavik,
class, Tom?
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I thought the same thing.
Language, yeah.
You
I'd
see,
be running the
these
other way.
lads,
When are you ever going to see a volcano erupt?
no,
Probably your
I
last
know,
day of your life. That's what.
You're
but
so morbid.
yeah, but Tom, I thought exactly the same thing. I was just
Yeah,
amazed by this, and I
yeah.
wasn't like spurting lava, but you could certainly see the red glow coming from it as I was
Nice.
flying into
Oh,
Reykjavik.
Nice.
And I
ah,
picked up the hire car Jeep from the airport, driving north through a blizzard, okay, on the 3rd of June, snow everywhere. Wondering was I actually going to make it to the northwest of Iceland that particular day because we had to go over a mountain pass. And I'm thinking, my goodness, I've just left Ireland where the day before I was sunburnt, and here I am in the land of absolute fire and ice.
Oh
You
my
know,
god.
and I'm
Yeah.
thinking we have.
brilliant.
No wonder they call it the land of
Yeah.
fire and ice. I
Yeah.
experienced all of that in one day. And what happened then was I went really early because the season doesn't even open to the 5th of June. And I wanted to be there for the opening day because opening days are, as you know, Dara, are always very special to
Mm.
me. But also, I wanted to be there really early before my groups came out on the 16th because I wanted to explore the territory. So you can imagine, I'm now alone in this lodge, walking miles and miles and miles of river. I'm talking like 40 miles. One day I did 20 kilometers in my waders, and had to
Oh,
replace
wow.
the studs 3 times when I was out there. Okay, because it's rocky, So there's
Oh,
lots of rock, but and in that at that early season, we had a lot of snow. The river was very very high, and it's glacial, so it's got that kind of like dark milky color, and it took quite a lot of time before everything cleared up. But I really wanted to get out early to try to find out where the best spots would be to catch the trout in the river. Again, kind of reasonably unexplored territory. They hadn't really fished for trout much before in the river. And I was running this program, which I had researched the year before, by the way. I'd been out for a month last year doing the same thing. But I wanted just to make sure that the people who had paid the money to come with me were going to get the service
okay.
that they deserve. And so I always like going early to do stuff like this. So out I went and I was walking in the snow, going to areas where there's absolutely no phone signal, parking the Jeep, hoping I don't get it stuck, wondering who to phone if I did actually get the Jeep stuck somewhere. But it was just exciting. It was being like a kid again and off exploring. So lots of quite mountainous, gorgy terrain. But then you have like flat land. So that we're talking about 40 kilometers of river here. And the upper part is very, very different from the lower part, like
And
extremely different.
and the lower part, would it be farmland that it's going through?
The lower part is farmland, yes, but not really as we know it.
Right.
So very, very little growing. I think I saw like 3 barley fields,
Right.
and the rest, yeah, you have some sheep, but it's very like the west of Ireland. That's the easiest way to describe it. You know, that type of terrain. Um, and then on the big pool at the bottom, it's like really rocky cliff. And the bottom of the river is like the bed is one big rock with ridges, like crocodile ridges, where when you're wading, you go down a ridge and then back up a ridge and down a ridge and back up a ridge, but no real boulders to trip over, but just like ridges to go up and down. And once you realize there's no massive holes to fall into, because of course you can't see anything because the river is glacial, once you realise that you're not going to disappear into a hole, then you begin to know the river a lot better, and it becomes to feel, I suppose, more safe. And that's why I wanted to get out and do it, because not only was I having my own groups and teaching Icelandic people how to cast, but also I was going to be guiding for a little bit as well out there. And I really wanted to make sure that I knew the pools and where I was going, and driving up and down the roads and the tracks in your Jeep. And it was through the river in the Jeep. It was very exciting, really, really very exciting.
And what size brown trout?
Yeah, thank you. Exactly what I was going to ask.
Jesus, Tom, we spent too much time together.
Actually, it's not me who asked that, Tara.
Yeah, true.
You stole my question.
Sorry, I'll stick to the salmon, Tom. I'll let you.
Exactly. Yeah.
So on that river, the kind of average size brown trout is probably about 2 pounds that we caught, but we did have brown trout up to 8 pounds. And like, these are wild creatures, really not fished for before. And Tom and Dara, and we know what it's like to fish for brown trout in Ireland, where sometimes, you know, people, you have seen some flies before. These fish really haven't seen many flies before. And once you start to target them and target the correct areas for them, and this took a bit of time for me to work out where they were going to be. But once you did work it out, then you found the area, and there was never just one trout sitting there. I mean, once you found an area with trout, you found an area with trout. And it was great because it was an eye opener also for the guides on the river who had been guiding salmon for all of this time, and occasionally catching a trout, you know, by default with, you know, a salmon fly. And I was saying that we should be appreciating every fish we catch, you know. And these fish are like, we'd be in the newspapers if we caught these fish in Ireland today, you know, but they wouldn't be as highly regarded to the Icelandic people as what they would be to us.
Yeah, that was the question I was going to ask you, actually. With such great brown trout there, how come they just never target them? Because they just had enough salmon that they wanted to go after? And is it more because also the tourism, i.e. the money, wants the salmon?
Well, yes. So the most expensive fishing in Iceland would be for salmon fishing. So, and it's a totally different regime than what we're used to. Like, for example, the River Blunda would be owned by the farmers, and the farmers would have a collaboration that they would get together and they would lease it out to one person. And then that one person would run the whole operation on the river, including its tributaries. And you wouldn't have any more than 8 or 9 people fishing the entire river at any one day. And that is like completely different from what we are used to.
Very exclusive.
Yeah. And not only that, because of that, it's very exclusive, yes. Obviously very expensive as well because of that. But you have like a lot of water where the salmon have been rested. There's not a chance we're going to fish every pool every day. And that makes a huge difference for salmon fishing. And it's not that they even have more fish in a lot of these rivers than we have here. The fish are just more rested, and that is something I really had to get my head around.
Interesting, yeah.
You know,
never realized that. So the brown trout were never really targeted. Then is that what you're saying? Just
well, to my knowledge, I haven't really been targeted, and I know they will be from now on because each number of years, the lease comes up for renewal, and the River Blunda has been taken over by a new company going into next year, and they are going to be targeting the brown trout and the char more than what has been. And one of the main reasons for that is because the Blunda has seen a decline in salmon over the last number of years. And even though, to me, it was still spectacular fishing, it wasn't maybe a spectacular fishing for the price it was being paid to go salmon fishing. And that's always something that we have to think about. You know, how much does it cost to go salmon fishing, and are we getting value for money wherever we're going?
And actually, that was actually the next question, because I did want to ask you is, what have the numbers of salmon been like in Iceland in the last few years? Have they seen a comparable drop off that we're seeing, in the rest of kind of, say, Ireland, UK, Scandinavia?
The wild salmon, yes. But of course, a lot of Iceland, they're not fishing for wild salmon. I know that the salmon, they're hatchery reared and they're released as smolts. And of course, are the wild, as they're heading off to the feeding grounds and everything else coming back. They're considered to be wild fish, but they're actually hatchery reared fish. And but the Blunda, as yet, is a wild salmon fishery, and to my knowledge. But it is in decline and it needs help, I would say, at the moment. And I'm sure that there will probably be a hatchery program put in place very, very soon.
Well, that's very interesting that you should say that. And I was just wondering then, like we hear of the Ranga, right, and that's known as hatchery ranch fish. Are there many more rivers in Iceland
Yes.
operating that? How many would you say? Would you know of? Is it three or four? Is it five, half a dozen? Is it more than
No,
that?
it's a lot more than that, Tom, I'd say. I mean,
Wow.
I'd say a lot of the rivers that we're hearing about, they're ranched fish. So I'd say that the Atlantic salmon are declining everywhere
Yeah.
and need to be protected no matter where. They
Mm.
have the same problems that all of the rest of the Atlantic salmon population has.
Which leads me on to fish farms and the controversy of
Yes.
fish farms in Iceland. I've covered this on the Last Salmon podcast. It was fascinating. Got to speak to Elvar Fredriksson. We spoke to him, Tom, as well, on our show
Yeah.
about the Salmon Summit. Jasper Pakkanen as well, we spoke to. And what really struck me was this was off the back of, it was actually autumn 2023. There was a massive escape of fish from the fish farms, and they were just really worried in terms of interbreeding and how that would affect the wild fish as well. But what was fascinating was 1%, now I know Iceland's small, 300,000 population, 1% of the population came out protesting against fish farms in the wake of this. Bjork even
Yes.
released a song about it and all that kind of stuff, and it really kind of took the notice of people, which I found fascinating. So much so there was a lot of pressure. There was a bill going through. They were discussing a bill about what they could do, how to best regulate and control fish farms in Iceland. That was going through Parliament, or was being discussed anyway a couple of months ago. I think they put it on hold because it was presidential elections or something. But I was really struck at that in terms of kind of how the people were coming out and, what it meant to the different people. And again, part of the reason why I wanted to chat to you, Glenda, was I was struck by you spoke to so many people. You kind of did a bit of a road trip and you spoke to different people around the country, didn't you, to get their reaction and thoughts
Yeah,
on
I did.
fish farms?
I mean, I left the Blunda on the second of August, and I had 5 days before I needed to come home to work. So instead of just coming directly home, I thought I'd do the lap around Iceland on the one road, So
Mm.
I wanted to go fishing in a place called Laxardalr, which is an extremely special place to fish for trout, Tom. You would love it there because these trout are enormous, like
Yeah.
enormous. They're
Mm.
not all enormous, but I mean, you have a chance of catching like a huge fish in this place. So I'd booked myself 2 days, and it's the Reykjavik Angling Club, SVFR, who runs this, and I know Doug. She's one of the board of directors, and got talking to Doug, and Doug said, "Yeah, come on up to the Laxardalr." So I had been working solidly for approximately 9 weeks. And when I got to Laxardalr, I'd booked myself 2 days fishing. And I'm going to be honest with you, I slept most of the time. And I know that you're gonna think you must be joking, right? But I
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
It's exhausting. You know what it's like, Tom. You've been guiding for day after day after
Yeah.
day. And in Iceland, we're guiding from 7 o'clock in the morning until 1 o'clock, and then from 4 o'clock until 10 o'clock.
Long
Okay.
days.
So
Mm.
so you're doing that day after day after day. And I absolutely adore
Tough
my
day.
job, but
Mm.
it's absolutely full
Mm.
on.
Yeah.
Okay. And then of course if you're hosting, we had our own hosted groups out. So you're there and you're having a bit of a social. In the evenings you're going to bed probably about 1 o'clock. You're getting back up again at 6:30, heading back out the door at 7. So you repeat this,
It takes its
well,
toll, Glenda.
I got to the Laxo Daller,
Mm.
and and I decided I'd go fishing, and it was a little bit weedy, as in like the river was a little bit green, a little bit weedy, and maybe a little bit low. So nobody was catching a load of fish, which was actually quite good for me. I didn't feel under pressure to actually go out there and catch fish. And but the first afternoon when I arrive, and their days fishing is different as well because you arrive in the afternoon and you start fishing, which is very rare to us because normally you arrive somewhere and you go to bed that night,
Well, you
get
go
up
to the
next morning,
bar
start
and
fishing. Yeah, yeah,
Something like that.
exactly. But no,
Yeah.
so what happens is a lot of these people will be driving from Reykjavik or being transported from Reykjavik. They arrive to a place around 2 o'clock and they're fishing by 4 and they're finishing at 10. And then they're starting the second half of their day the following morning. So their days are different from ours. So
Right.
anyway, my day
Yeah.
started at 4 o'clock on the Laxodalr, and I arrived up having driven my way from the Blunder, which is about 2.5 hours, 3 hour drive. Um, and I get there and I go out fishing. I feel under pressure to catch a fish to begin with, because of course, booked the fishing, heading out to go fishing.
Mm.
And then I thought, Glenda, what are you doing? You don't need to catch a fish. It doesn't matter whether you catch a fish or
Mm.
not. Why? What are you putting yourself under pressure for? So I decided that I had to go home early. And the next morning, I wouldn't go out. I wouldn't take the car. I would just walk to the nearest little pool, fish it, and walk home again, which is what I did. And then I had that evening to fish as well. So I decided around 7:30 that evening that I would, after sleeping for about 5 hours, that I would go back out fishing, and I'd fish for just a couple of hours before I had to finish at 10 o'clock. And off I went and went up to a particular pool that I had been to before and cast out. It was nymphing with the Oris balls, and very, very windy, very difficult, kept catching weed. And I thought, I'm just going to put on my favorite sunray shadow and go for it. And so I did, and I went up above the pool, and that is very volcanic there, and it is it's really it's very black sand, and I'll show you the pictures of the trout in the sand. But anyway, I hooked this beast of a fish, and I play it, and of course now I'm doing the oh please don't fall off. This is like a quarter to 10 at night. I hook it right, going please don't fall off, please don't fall off, and it's jumping and running. Of course, with a single-handed 5 weight, and it's doing everything it can do to get off. Anyway, eventually I get it, and I just slide it up the volcanic sand because my net was too small, and I had this beautiful fish, 68 centimeter fish, which I don't really know how big that is, probably about 7 pounds, something like that.
beautiful.
But this to
Okay.
me was like a monster fish. Now I know they catch them much bigger there, right? But this was
Yeah.
an awesome fish. And I'm driving, I release the fish and I get it on video, and I'm driving back to the lodge that night, and it was a beautiful sunset. And you don't see that very often because most of the time I'm there in Iceland when there's no darkness at all.
Mm.
It was completely light the whole night. And so the sun setting, and I'm driving back to the lodge, and I'm thinking, oh, that was just awesome. So it was a
Mm.
brilliant fish.
Great to be able to actually just get to enjoy it, isn't it? Like after how many weeks of
Yeah.
guiding and
Mm.
and when you're not on, and like you said, but it probably only came together because you didn't put yourself under pressure. You just said, look, I'll just,
Yeah. Yeah, and I had loads of sleep. But anyway, I was trying to tell you about my road trip. So then
yes,
Mm.
I decided I was heading from there, and I was going to go and see Sigfor, a friend of mine, who I actually met the very first time I went to Iceland. And that's another story for another day. But he came over here with me to Ireland on the Blackwater. We
yeah, I met
ran a
him.
hitching together. You met Sigfor, yeah.
Big Viking guy.
Okay. So yeah, big Viking guy, yeah. So I know Sigapur and his girlfriend Christine very well, and they're working in a place called Sella, which is part of the Six Rivers program, and they it's owned by Ratcliffe, and they have a fantastic program up there, again hatchery program, and restoration, trying to conserve everything that they're doing. Very few people fish in the rivers, and but I went up to see them and had a chat with them about the fish farms and about salmon fishing. And I went down then to the Orkla, was talking to Thorster, and made my way down then to the East Ranga on the way home, fished there for a little bit. And but during this time I met these people, and with the different people I met, there was some like different points that I took from each of them. And so if we just take the three people, like Sigfor, and Peter Rippon, who's the director of Rip Sporting, and also Doug, who's on the board of the directors of the Reykjavik Angling Club, who I actually had a chance to talk to, and they've also sent me some reports that they've done. And one of the biggest points that Sigþór had was that 75% of Icelandic people are against fish farms. Okay, so one of the major points is that. And of course, another one is that there's not many people live in the places where they're putting these fish farms. And of course, you have the fish farms lobbying these people, um, promising them everything. But the one thing that I didn't know and I wasn't aware of is that the people who live there, and maybe I hope I'm taking this up correctly, but it seems to be that the people who live in these areas, their votes are worth much more than the votes from somebody like in Reykjavik, who is voting for or against fish farms. And don't really understand how that works, because of course in Ireland, or we have one vote and that's how it is. But it seems that their vote is worth much more. It's what Sigþór was saying, that for whatever reason their vote seems to be held higher than somebody if they lived in Reykjavik. But another point that Sigþór had was that he can't understand why there would be fish farms anyway, apart from, obviously it's, high profit when they're done in the sea. But why would you not have them on land? I mean, Iceland, obviously, they have a unique position where to have the land-based farms, because he was telling me that, not only do they have hot water, cold water, clean water, and clean energy, but he was making the joke like the clean energy is the only kind of inexpensive thing that there is in Iceland, So it would be so easy for them to set up these farms, land-based farms in Iceland.
And it's always these things like the people, and this is, I couldn't, because when I spoke to Elvar Friedrichsen, the program director of NASF, about the issues, and initially it was like, yeah, the people were coming out protesting, and then what was happening was the bill was getting diluted. So they came out, say the politicians said, right, we're going to regulate it this way. And then the outcry from the industry and the outcry from, from all the lobbyists or whatever, and suddenly the bill is starting to get diluted and diluted. And I was saying this to Elvar, it's like, I don't understand. It's like, when people, am I just being simple here when 75% of the people are against it? We know it's bad for the environment. It only creates a few small jobs, and I know in locally maybe impoverished rural areas, but
when you were talking to Elvar, was there any particular reason why Iceland was chosen?
It was really interesting. The hatch, the fish farm, the fish from the fish farms, the hatchery fish are actually Norwegian stock. So basically what they were doing was they brought, so this is another outcry, like they're saying this is not even Icelandic fish that are being reared in the water. Like, these are Norwegian stock. And I think it was just literally cold, clean waters they were looking for. They were able to basically move into these rural areas. I suppose it's the same model as the west of Scotland. They say to the government, look, we'll go move into these local rural areas, we'll give them jobs, we'll create X amount of millions for the economy. Bob's your uncle. And, they look at it and go, yeah, we'll take that. Thanks very much. Just, you look at it, Glenda, isn't it? And I suppose my question to you was, the people you spoke to, are they just so angry, tearing their hair out, frustrated at why the government is not listening to them? Like,
yes, and I suppose we all have the same feeling, don't we, around the world? But they are tearing their hair out. And Doug, who again is on the board of directors of the Reykjavik Angling Club, she sent me a report that was from the annual general meeting, calling the government to respond to the emergency situation that's arisen in fish farming around Iceland. And they talk about the escape of those thousands of fish from that farm, which in the place that we can't pronounce, I think it's Patreksfjorda or something like that. But it's the Arctic Fishes Farm, and one of her main points was that, according to Icelandic law, fish farming companies are self-regulated. Yes, I know. I was absolutely shocked as well to hear this. So this is on their report that they've sent to their government, that the fish farms are self-regulated, and it took 95 days had passed without the company checking the condition of the pen, which had 2 holes, where those fish escaped from. And of course, the big problem with that, for people who don't understand the problem, is that those were also mature fish, which can go up the rivers and spawn with our native Atlantic salmon.
Interbreed,
which is a huge problem. So anyway, they're calling to the government to try to get the Icelandic Food Agency, who does have authority to apply fines, and to make the fines a lot bigger. And when they're fined, then to put the money back in to trying to help conserve the Atlantic salmon. And that was what she was trying to say or that's what the Reykjavik Angling Club was saying, and writing to the government. But Peter Rippon also came up with one that I found was really interesting as well. Apart from all of the sludge accumulating from under the sea pens and the infestations of sea lice, but he also asked a question of that: if they did bring the sea cages in, then where is the high protein food coming from to feed the fish? And is it coming from, hopefully repurposing offcuts from sea processing industry, or where else are they going to get the food from? Or does it go back to the ocean, taking the food out of the ocean that or wild fish, not just Atlantic salmon, but any fish needs? So it's really, they're angry. They're angry with, and I think to answer your question, Dara, why would they go to Iceland? There's so few people in Iceland to be able to stop a company which is so big, so huge, has so much voice, and they're so frustrated. I mean, Sigurður was saying it's like an uphill battle all the way. They absolutely know their job inside out, and he said it's corrupt.
That is the word, corrupt. Exactly. Yeah. That's it. Exactly. Where you have millions, billions at stake.
Yes.
We never have that here.
No.
No.
Just on that, actually, you asked about the fish feed, and there's a book I'd highly recommend. We covered it on the last salmon. Is The New Fish by Simon Setra and Kjell Osteli, two Norwegian investigative journalists. We spoke to Simon, really interesting guy. But I everybody I talk to when I'm talking about this issue, I just read The New Fish. It just takes you through the history and development of salmon farming from Norwegian early days in the 1960s up to the behemoth that it is nowadays, and it's full of incredible stats and quotes, and it looks at Iceland as well. But just in terms of the fish feed, it takes 1.2 kilos of fish feed to rear a 1 kilo salmon, right? So like, think of that. We're actually we're taking more from the ocean. To rear like 1.2 versus 1, and with the fish feed, where they're actually taking it from is they're taking it from
it's a diminishing return.
A diminishing return, exactly. But they're taking this from like West African waters, so it's actually the impoverished coastal communities around the world is where they're taking this fish feed from.
But remember, we did this before, Dara, and I forget who it was with again. Sorry, because we've done a couple of them. But and she had said, was one of the girls from, remember, she was from the Scottish group, but she said the whole thing was going to be sustainability, and this is the only way we can heighten awareness of what is wrong with this industry, because it's not sustainable. To get 1 kilo, to produce 1 kilo takes 1.2 kilo. That's not sustainable, regardless of even what that's not sustainable. And this, this is. Yeah, it's got to be highlighted.
And the other thing about that as well, Tom and Glenda, is, I hate to say it, but the whole thing with climate change, might actually be the one thing that will force them onto land, because they're struggling to find the cold, clean waters that they need for their fish farms. So like, one unfortunate corollary of this might be that they, but when there's so much money at stake, I wouldn't hold my breath for the immediate future anyway.
One thing I would like to talk about as well is that because you can sometimes be at a height and look down, you can see the salmon at times, and to watch the fish and the fish's behaviour was very interesting for me. And for guides, it's a really interesting way to guide when you can actually see the fly coming across the fish, and the fish either moving out of the way or a group of fish jostling for the same fly, or it's really I find it really interesting to watch fish's behaviour, and it's a great learning curve for me. And you can imagine I'm on the top of a rock. There's a place called the Dammer, which is a very well known pool at the very lower part of the Blunda, and you're kind of hanging on you're not hanging on a rock, you're standing on a rock, casting out into a pool. And the guides, or you can have people way above you, I mean, like very high above you, looking down, and they can clearly see the fish. and you can see the person's fly. And in Iceland, they do a lot of stripping their flies. So, of course, as a guide, you'd be up there going, okay, strip, 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 strip. And you
Yeah,
see the fish
yeah.
come after the fly. You go, strip, strip, strip. It's got it. It's got it. Lift the rod. It's just like amazing to see this happen. But Dara, it's like as well when you went to Greenland with me a few years ago, and when there's maybe only one fish in a pool, it's quite difficult to catch it.
Mm.
But when you have a few fish in a pool, I think they begin to compete.
Yes.
So I think it's easier to catch fish the bigger the head of the fish that are in the pool. Um, and they really do start to compete. I mean, Arctic char definitely do, and I found the same with salmon when I was watching them. And quite often, and I always think this on the Blackwater, we don't sight fish. You cannot see fish in the Blackwater, which is obviously the reason why it's called the Blackwater here in Ireland. When you look across, it looks black, so you can't see into the river. But I often wondered how many fish actually picked your fly up into its mouth without you even
Hmm.
knowing.
Very good
And
point.
I can tell you there's a lot more do that than we think.
Really?
Because with watching them in the dammer and watching them in different places, they'll pick the fly up. The person who's there in the end of the rod doesn't know anything about it and drop the fly again. Yeah, I think more fish take our flies than we would give it credit for, really. Because I mean, we're fishing away, and sometimes you're like, was that something? And
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of beginners might touch a rock and think maybe it was something, or but quite often we're fishing and thinking, oh, I wonder, was that something? And the possibility is that it could have been just a fish pick something up in its mouth and
Mm.
drop it again. But I don't know. I find the whole thing fascinating, and some of the char that were coming after our flies and stuff as well. I mean, like, we're talking big char. We're talking like 4 or 5 pound char, 6 pound char. And I know in Iceland or in Greenland we catch you know, maybe bigger char than that. But there's huge fish no matter whereabouts in the world you
Yeah,
catch them.
and they're
Like
fabulous fish.
any brown trout of 2 pounds, 3 pounds, char of 2 pounds, 3 pounds, 4 pounds. To me, they're huge fish, huge.
Mm.
And we just have a different mentality as well, I think, from the Icelandic people. Like, for example, the people that we brought over in our groups, we had quite a number of Irish people came over, Scottish people, Americans came on our hosted trips to Canada. And then I was guiding quite a lot of Icelandic people as well. So what I've learned is that when Icelandic people pay for their fishing and go fishing, they actually really do expect to catch fish. Now, I know we all expect to catch fish, and we all have to go fishing with the hope that we're going to catch fish. Because if you don't have that hope, I don't think there's any point in going fishing. But I'm talking about a different expectation, one that I hadn't really seen before. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it's different because the people that I was guiding, they were expecting to catch fish, like truly expecting to catch fish. And I'm and I heard a phrase out there, pay to play, and I'd
Yeah.
never heard it before anywhere else in the world that I've been.
Mm.
Um, and it's just a different way of thinking. I'm not saying that they're expecting to catch fish because they know there's lots of fish there. What I'm saying is that they expect to catch fish because they've paid the money to catch the fish, and there should be a lot of fish there because of the money they're paying for it.
And if they don't catch, who do they blame?
Well, they don't blame the guides, I mean, obviously, and they don't really blame anybody, and they certainly don't blame themselves, right? But, no, there's no one to blame, but they might think about going somewhere different, And
Yeah.
I had people
But
fishing for a day and not catching anything, wondering why, and
Bring them
I
to
don't know how
Ireland.
long it took you to catch your first salmon,
yeah.
Dara, or Tom, or trout fishing. I mean, we go fishing and we hope to catch something, and yeah,
Mm.
sometimes we do.
Might
But
might I say that this expectation that is amongst them mightn't last too long.
yeah,
You know,
I I
because
I
unless,
understand.
I mean, we can't always go to the best place in the world unless we're fabulously wealthy. Right? We can't always go to the best place in the world. We have to go to some place sometimes. Like, we know what fishing in Ireland is like. It can be good, but it's not always the best. And it's the same worldwide. I think
Yeah,
that maybe they've been a bit spoiled so far. I don't know.
Tom, you're absolutely right. And this is something that I was telling each one of them as I met them one by one, and they really could not get their heads around it. Because it's not that they're better anglers than us. I can assure you that.
Mm.
Their casting ability is not like ours.
Mm.
Not at all like ours. I mean, we have to learn how to fish to be able to catch fish. They
Mm.
catch fish because there's a lot of fish there. Okay. We have to learn our techniques, and we have to spend quite a number of days going out to the river or to the lake. And
Yeah.
okay, let's get real. Years, okay, to be able to perfect what we're doing. They don't have to do that. So they can very quickly today get the Instagram post, or get their face up on Facebook with
Yeah.
a huge fish. Whereas we had to really work for that.
Mm.
No matter, even when our fishing was really good, we were still working for our fish. And we were still learning how to cast and learning about the different flies and learning how to work the flies, and what watercraft was. Whereas it's very different for them. And I suppose I got myself to this. I'm at this lovely stage in my life where I actually can tell people today that you don't realize that you're absolutely spoiled. But what they don't realize as well is that like for us, I mean, one of the most expensive days that we have here on the Blackwater, would be like about €100. The price of fishing in Iceland is 10 times that for a day.
Mm.
So it's at least 10 times that for a day. So there's a huge difference in expectations when people pay the money
Sure.
to go fishing.
Yeah.
But I also told them that I'm not too sure how happy they would be to come to Ireland to fish if they expected to catch fish the way they do there. But guys, I must say I've traveled a lot, and the best country in the world is our little country. I mean, it's got the best scenery. We have awesome fishing, by the way. Or brown trout fishing on the little rivers and the lakes is still world class. We have banter, which doesn't happen in a lot of different countries, and we really have something very special here. So people always ask me of the trips that I do, where's your favorite country? And it really is Ireland. I love going away, but I really love coming home.
Can I ask you, Glenda, though, is it getting harder to keep that love and optimism up? Because when you see the way the salmon numbers are going the last years, and there's an air of pessimism, or maybe that's just me, there's an air of pessimism around that I worry about for the future. Yeah,
I do too. But in saying that, Dara, I mean, the beginning of this year, the Blackwater actually did very well. So we have an operation here in the Blackwater, Blackwater salmon fishery, and it runs full time when I'm not here. And I, I, I travel not because I need to travel to find the work. I travel because I really enjoy seeing the world. And the only way that I can achieve that is by traveling through fishing and, through the skills that I have as a teacher, and also taking groups with me. And for 15 years, I was in one place, which was Blackwater Lodge. And we had a huge operation going there. But I was trapped, is the easiest way to say it, right? It was great to meet people. Fishing one river was fantastic. You got to learn it really, really well. But one of the things that I really didn't like was that I couldn't really travel, because every time you plan something, something would come up. You were employing maybe 20 members of staff and 10 guides at that time. So something would always happen that kept you there. And I remember writing this email way back. I had just been invited to go to Canada to do a demonstration. And it was on the River Miramichi. And I was going to do a casting demonstration, go fishing there. And I can remember writing this email saying, terribly sorry, can't go, must cook. At the lodge for the people that was there. And I'm thinking, what are you doing? Delete, 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 delete. I'm going to Canada, right? And so you can imagine, I've always had this dream of traveling. I've always wanted to see the world through fishing. And what it does then is bring back lots and lots of different techniques back to Ireland. And, let's not forget, I mean, I travel around the world, yes, bringing people, but I bring a lot of people to Ireland every year. And I run a lot of trips here to Ireland, and we have people coming from all over the world still fishing with us in Ireland. And actually, value for money, we are an extremely good country to go fishing in. Yes, the salmon are declining. We're doing what we can to try and stop that. But we bring as many people to Ireland as what I do bringing people around the world. So,
Right.
we have the Blackwater, and I also take 3 weeks on Kerrysville in the Blackwater every year, bringing people from the States and Norway and potentially Iceland in February, March, doing hosted trips and teaching on it. And of course, we do Delphi.
Mm.
So we have a lot of hosted trips within Ireland as well as outside of Ireland.
And I suppose, look, the selling point for Ireland is, like you said, it's not just the fishing, it's the crack, it's the scenery, it's the hosts, it's the everything else.
We also do have some nice fishing.
And we have some nice fishing.
The beginning of this year in the Blackwater was actually reasonably good. We never advertise it as being so because, it's not that we're pessimists, but we don't want, to go, oh, by the way, guys, there's lots of fish in the river now, because of everything that's going on. We don't advertise the fact that we're catching fish, but we were catching fish, and we were catching quite a lot of fish at the beginning of this year until a drought came along. And of course, a drought's a drought. There's nothing you can do about it. We've been standing in Cappoquin and further down the Blackwater looking at the fish jumping for the last couple of months. They're everywhere, and we're just waiting for some rain to come that those fish will move up the system. So we do have fish. And for example, the River Blunda doesn't have any more fish coming into it than the Blackwater. It actually has less fish coming into it, which is something that I could not get my head around. The reason why we're catching more is because there's nobody fishing it compared to how many people's fishing on our rivers.
It's interesting. That's very interesting.
The fish are rested.
But another thing you just said there, Darragh, when you were saying to Glenda, when you asked her, is it hard to keep up your hopes and your pessimism around with regards to salmon number? I mean, you got to remember, that's not an Irish problem. That's all over the place,
Oh yeah, 100%.
With regards to Ireland, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's not just Ireland. It's I mean, like we know because we've done it about Norway this year as well.
Yeah,
and very interesting to hear you say that, Glenda. I wasn't aware of the amount of ranching that's going on in Iceland and what it seems to be doing for their salmon numbers there. That seems to be why Iceland is bucking the trend with regards to angling success. Whatever, fair to say that, Glenda, that on account of the ranching that's done there has really brought up its success as an angling destination.
But that could also be tempering because, again, what I was reading was because of the changing climate that the ranched fish are struggling as well. That they're seeing decreased numbers as well. It's the Icelandic people are complaining about like the fishing, So like you said,
we talk about some sea trout in Patagonia or some Arctic char in Greenland if you want.
Well, I tell you what,
the salmon for a little bit.
I tell you what I wanted to ask you is you're off. Well, actually, you're off into Greenland we're recording this on the Monday. You're off to Greenland on the Wednesday. I did want to ask you, and you did touch on it there in terms of the travel. You just love seeing the world. Is it the kind of life that you're loving now, that this is the way you want it to be now going forward? You're on the road, you touch bases with the Blackwater, dip in and out, but essentially you're out there.
You're nomadic.
No, actually no. So let's just backtrack a tiny bit. So I think for me, I've always been a traveler. Okay, I've always wanted to travel. I've always wanted to see the world. But I absolutely adore the Blackwater, and I do a lot in the Blackwater through February, part of March, and April and May. So I run lots of courses in the Blackwater, the one-day Skagit courses, the one-day learn how to, basic beginner courses, advanced courses. So I do a lot of work in the Blackwater up until about the end of May. And then usually I take off. Okay, March, I take off to Patagonia every March for a couple of weeks to go away. The fishing in Ireland's not really very good in March as far as salmon fishing is concerned. I'm not missing much as far as, and I head off to Patagonia, which I've done for years and years and years. But what I love to do is I love to go, and at the moment, and that's the easiest way to say it, at this moment of my life, my children are growing up. Anna is 23 almost, Ian is 21. And at this point of my life, and for the last 10 years, I've really enjoyed traveling, meeting people and taking people with me. And I've always promised people that I'd never take them somewhere that I haven't been before. So I always go and research it before I go, and I will never let them go without me. So I'm not a big travel company. I'm a small travel company in the sense where when you're going, you're always going with me. Okay, so I'm always there on the ground. If we need to charter a boat in Greenland, if something happens with the volcanoes, if something, I'm usually there. I'll know enough people, and I've been there before to be able to get us out of most situations. And to me, that's really important,
Mm.
So, and also about the tackle and what do we need before we get there, and making sure everyone is fully prepared before they head out on a trip of a lifetime. Let's face it, Dara. I mean, a lot of these trips are trips of lifetimes. Um, so yeah, at the moment, I love traveling. I don't know how long it will last. I don't know how long I can do it. I'm 50 in February, so I don't know how long I want to do this, or how long I can do it. Hopefully a very long time, because I still love it.
Yeah.
But of course, we all change as we get older, and we have different expectations of what we would want for our lives. And right now, I'm loving it. Keeps me fit. I love walking, love hiking, and I love exploring.
And like you said, I suppose when you're gone from the Blackwater, it makes you appreciate it all the more when you come
Yeah,
back.
I came back. Yeah, absolutely. Came back into Ireland from being away for the 2 months I was gone, and really to have the civilization, to have the scenery, driving down from Dublin Airport, realizing that you can pop in, get a cup of coffee. You don't need to fill up your Jeep before you leave anywhere, because there's going to be a petrol station 20 miles away from you. And to have all of the community that goes around living in Ireland, which you don't have in Iceland. I mean, you leave Reykjavik and there's nobody else really out and about, around Iceland. Everybody, not everybody, but a majority of people live in Reykjavik. And the rest of the
Mm.
place is very isolated. They have wonderful little communities, but it's very, very isolated, where there's a few hundred people living in small villages. Um, so I love Ireland for that reason, and I just love being at home. And of course, I'm at home most winters, all winter. Where I do my
Mm.
writing, and I plan for the following season, and I really enjoy kind of cuddling up and walking. So we're walking Ireland at the moment.
So is this your last trip now to Greenland? Is this your last trip for the year?
Yes, this is my last trip of the year to Greenland, and I head out on Wednesday.
Tell me more about it. So I went to Greenland with you 2021, was it? I think. Jeez, it feels like a long time ago.
Was it 21?
22, I think.
22, jeez, it was only 2 years
Yeah, it
ago.
was 22 actually.
God, I feel like I've aged 20 years since then. It was one of the highlights of my life, going on that trip. 10 days, no phone signal. It was brilliant. Fishing, climbing mountains, catching fish. To this day, I still think back and look back on it with just, like I said, one of the trip of a lifetime.
I think one of the most special things about Greenland is that it really is in the wilderness. At the moment, we still have 3 flights and 3 boats to get there. It's changing very soon. I'll talk about that in a moment. But when I head out on Wednesday, I'm flying from Dublin to Copenhagen then across into Greenland, and then flying internally in Greenland to a little place called Manitsoq. And then we get the big boat when the tide's right, and then we get the smaller boat out in the ocean, and then we get into the dinghy, and we make our way up those stairs, the side of the cliff, to get to the Kangia camp. But this time is different for me. I've been to the Kangia camp many times with you, Dara, and other people, and it's a fabulous operation. However, we have a new operation, and this is something which I haven't done before, and I'm really excited about this. For a start, I'm not going guiding on Wednesday. I'm not taking people with me or hosting trips. I'm actually going exploring and getting some promotional work for an absolutely new place, where I'm led to believe that it's a 2 river program, run by Solid Adventures. And I have a week next year, which I'll be hosting, which opens up for bookings very, very soon. But this one river has not really been fished by anybody outside of Greenland before. And how special is that, guys?
Yes,
Really.
So
I mean,
you're going to get to fish this next week, not from Wednesday, yeah?
Yeah, from Thursday, yeah.
From Thursday. Brilliant.
Yeah. I know. I mean,
That's
it's
fantastic.
such a privilege. It's such a privilege to be in this position, to be able to go out there and do this. And so the camp is being built as we speak. There's no toilet or anything in it at the moment. So we're going to spend several nights out there in the wilderness. And one river is right beside the camp, and we can walk up the river. We can fish very close to the sea, and then there's a little lake where you get your rowing boat and you row across to the other side of the lake, and then you fish the rest of the river. So that's one river, and that is an easy river. You don't have to walk terribly far if you don't want to. Um, and then the second river is by boat, 15 minutes by boat from the camp which is being built. And this is a river where you can hike as far as you want up the river, at your own speed. If you love walking, this is a fabulous place. And of course, Dara, you love walking. I love walking. Tom Doc, you like walking. We love this type of adventure. You're out there, off you go, get the boat home again, and there's no phone signal. I mean, nobody's getting you. I'm not even. This is the only place every year I do not bring my laptop. Everywhere else that I go, people can get me at the moment, right? But there, nobody can get me. So I have been in the library, locking myself in, trying to make sure that I've got my work caught up with before I go out of here on Wednesday, because, well, you're not going to get me.
And I wouldn't mind.
Fantastic.
Greenland is wilderness enough, but by the sense of it, you're going even wilder. Like, it's.
I know.
I'm very jealous.
This new program as well. I mean, it's different from the other one because we have sea fishing as well on this program, and we're going to be fishing on the fly. Remember, this is all fly fishing, so we're going to be catching cod, wolffish, sea run, arctic char, and halibut in the ocean and off the sides of the ocean. And by the way, they've actually hooked salmon along the coast. Wow. To this point. Nobody's landed one yet. They've always been broken. But of course, the salmon go there to Greenland to feed. They've hooked salmon, but nobody's landed one. So we'll see. But this is like a huge adventure for me. It's going to be dark at night, which again is, I've never been to Greenland in the darkness.
Oh, yeah, because
I might get to see some northern lights. Who knows? That would be awesome. And it's just going to be a massive adventure. So I can't wait to get back to tell you all about it, guys. If I come home,
book me in.
I'm jealous, very jealous, very, very jealous. Yeah, that sounds absolutely brilliant. And to and such a thing for you to get to be one of the first people from outside Greenland to get to fish it. That is wonderful.
Next year, the international airport is opening on the west coast in Nuuk. Is that right?
Yes, it's Nuuk. Yes.
So,
where sometimes we end up having to go anyway, because sometimes we can't land the flight in Manitowoc. And you see, things become easier, Dara, because...
But that's a problem.
In Greenland, it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem.
Isn't this so? Are you worried that, right, okay, like, and I totally understand, like when I was there, I think we spoke about this, Tom, when I was kind of giving my thoughts on it, was that, the old hunter fisherman, the next generation, they don't want that lifestyle, if they can be Airbnb hosts, you know what I mean? Because, the flights are coming in directly now from America onto the West Coast. Like, why should they have that hard life that their parents and grandparents had if they can have a much easier life? But how much is it going to change? That's what I wonder.
Yeah, that is potentially a problem, Dara, absolutely. Because at the moment, as I said to you, to get to where we need to go, we have to get 3 flights from Ireland and 3 boats. Now, I understand completely that some people don't have the time to do that. So your 6 days fishing turns into 10 days because you're traveling 2 days there and 2 days home, because we have to overnight somewhere, and we usually overnight in Copenhagen. And coming back home again, we actually overnight in Manitowoc and Copenhagen and then home. But from next year, the international airport opens in Nuuk, huge airport. And that means that, we don't exactly know where the flights are going to be coming from or going from. I'm sure they probably won't be going directly from Dublin to Nuuk, but they might be.
Would it be London, do you reckon?
It could be, and that would be really easy for all of us to get there if it was London. London to Nuuk is very, very simple. But what I think it does is it opens it up to a lot more people who don't have as much time to travel. But what it does for me is also take away some of the absolute rawness that that you got to the end of the world, right? Because remember, Dara, when we got on that boat and we were singing songs on the way to Candia, we knew we were off on an adventure, and we knew that we had travelled for days to get there. And sometimes in Greenland, because of the weather conditions, you would often be delayed, and you might be sleeping in some sort of army barrack somewhere with a scratchy woolen blanket for the night, and you're going on an adventure when these things happen.
Passing the bottle of whiskey around to keep you warm and help you sleep.
Yes, and so things are different, and yes, it will become maybe a bit more functional. Yes, of course, it's going to suit a lot more people. And another reason why we're putting the camp where it is, and we've got these two new rivers, is that before we had to wait for the tides because we were at the very top of the fjord, and that would have been a problem at times, Dara, with having to hang around, wait for 6 hours, 7 hours till we got the tide right, and then make it up, and sometimes not arrive until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. This new program will be a lot easier. We can fly to Nuuk, we can travel out by boat at any time we want, and be able to be at the mouth of the fjord without having to get three boats. Just need one boat to get there, and think the operation will be a lot easier. In fact, and the other thing is that Dara, also that when you went to Kangia, there was a lot of walking, and some people just weren't able for it. Whereas this one, you can do as much or as little walking as you really like. You know, if you want to walk a lot, you can, and if you don't want to walk a lot, you don't have to. So there you have the choices, and I think that's what's important in this Two River Valley project.
Sounds too easy. I prefer the hardship. Where you, you know what I mean. Like, give me the 6 boats, 10 flights. Missed.
No, I know.
You know what I mean? Like that's what it's all about. But look, I can totally understand why and these rivers sound incredible if they haven't been fished before.
Yes.
And I remember, like I said, we were there. I think it was Lawson, the guide at the time, was saying they were talking about some river that had rumors of some monster char in it. So if it's that one, do let us know.
That's where we're going, in this little village.
Well, enjoy.
Back on the Inuit people there. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And Lawson's still there, and Lawson will be coming over with us too to investigate it as well.
Fantastic. Before we let you go, Glenda, any memorable fish on the fly this year? Was it the Icelandic PB?
Yeah, that was a fantastic fish. I mean, that 95 centimeter salmon really was put up an awesome fight. It tried to run down the rapids like 2 or 3 times, and I got it back. I must say one of my hooks was slightly bent, and really good hooks, by the way, and 20-pound leader. So I was using quite strong stuff, but yeah, so that was a great fish to have. And I said it was one of the biggest fish caught in Blunda, up to the town that I left anyway. But of course, that's right. I was telling you about this year as well on the Laxerdalr. That was an almighty fish. I loved that one as well. So they're my best fish this year, I suppose. Yeah.
So
apart from the ones that got away.
That leads us to the next one then, because as guest of the show, we're going to have to ask you, Glenda, what is your most memorable fish on the fly?
My most memorable fish. Okay, so I've caught, thankfully and gratefully, quite a number of fish in my time. And my biggest salmon was a 23-pound salmon on the River Tay, which equaled my biggest sea trout, which was a 23-pound sea trout in Patagonia. But they're not my most memorable fish. My most memorable fish is actually when I was 14 years old, and I was fishing in this little lake called Carrickmannan. And I remember my father, who knew the guy who was a dog breeder, and his name was Davison McVeigh. And this little lake was a little place called Clinchy. And it makes it even more special because when I look back now, we probably shouldn't have been fishing this lake. We were probably poaching because we think the Dundonald Angling Club had the rights to the lake, but because my father knew Davison McVeigh, Davison just let us go fishing, and off we went out in a little boat, and probably we were not very well liked by the Dundonald Angling Club. Okay, but I didn't even realise this at the time. So Keith Neely and myself, we'd gone fishing, and we'd been dropped off by one of our parents. And we were out in the boat, wearing life jackets, of course, because we had to. And we didn't want to, but we had to. We weren't let loose unless we were. But I remember catching this trout, this brown trout, and on an ace of spades. Do you remember that old fly? Does anybody even use the ace of spades anymore?
Yeah.
What's a tie of an ace of spades? Tom Dock, because Dara, I can see him here. He doesn't even know what it is. He's going, what is that?
It's a black chenille body with the Matuka style cock hackle down through the bottom with a rib up through it, and then cloaked over with bronze mallard.
Yeah, so it's called an ace of spades. Yeah. And I caught this 4-pound brown trout. It was enormous fish. Enormous fish. I don't know whether it was like native to the lake, whether it was stocked probably by the Dundonald Angling Club, but if they had stocked it, they wouldn't have been stocking it at that size, right? So this trout had probably lived in this lake for a very long time. So in those days, we killed everything that we caught, and so I killed this fish and brought it home. And I can't tell you what it tasted like because we didn't eat it. Because I remember my father was so proud of me catching this fish that this fish went into our big chest freezer in the garage. And every single time, we had a huge family, every single time an aunt or an uncle would appear to the house for a cup of tea. Glenda, go out to the freezer there and get your trout and show Aunt Doris. Or Glenda, go out to the freezer and get the trout and show your Uncle Michael, you know? And I was like, this trout stayed in this freezer for, I'd say, about 10 years and kept being displayed to anybody that came until, unfortunately, I remember I'd moved to Scotland at the time and my poor father had to bin this trout. But anyway, so that was my most memorable fish on the fly. It was enormous, enormous for the lake and for my time in my life, you know.
Well, set you on the path for future greatness, Glenda.
Yeah.
Well done.
Great. It really was
Certainly
great.
did. It certainly did.
Glenda, tight lines for Greenland and for what remains of the season. It's been another eventful year for you.
Yes.
I'm very jealous. Keep up the great work you do at home and abroad. It's always brilliant chatting to you, finding out about your stories. You're always itching to go further and further afield. And, you know, I mean that in terms of fishing on the river, whatever you're doing, tactics, everything. You're looking to I always learn new stuff whenever I chat to you. So I'll be looking forward to catching up with you again when you come back from Greenland and before next season starts as well. So thanks again for joining us.
Thank you very much, Darren. It's nice to talk to you, Tom, as well.
Our thanks to Glenda for joining us on the show. And don't forget to rate, review and follow the Ireland on the Fly podcast on Apple, Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts from.
Plus you can keep up to date on IrelandOnTheFly.com as well as on Instagram, and myself and Tom will be back with another episode about the people and places of fly fishing in Ireland.